10 minutes before I left to come down to Boulder, I saw that Gakyo Sensei had been trying to get in touch with me for the last 2 hours to ask me to give the talk tonight. So I'm not quite sure what's going to happen. I think we'll all find out together. I feel a little like the visual came to me sitting that I was pushing a cart to the edge of a cliff. I think it was the White Cliffs of Dover for some reason. And this idea of like giving the final push and then jumping on it as it goes over the edge. But I wrote back to him, said I would do this, and then I just thought, and he gave me a list of, from one of the conversations here, about all of the things that different people in the group would like to hear about. I may miss all of them, but there's a ton of great talks that if I ever have a chance to present on and get to over-prepare, I'll do something really nice with it. But I didn't know what to do, and I just thought the books are all over my house, and I just thought the first Dharma book I come across I'll grab, and there'll be something in there, and that's what I'll share about tonight. And this was the book, and if you haven't come across this yet, Opening to Oneness, Practical and Philosophical Guide to the Zen Precepts, Nancy Mujo Baker. It's a really wonderful book. She gave a great talk for Zen Peacemaker International, and Hoden told me it is available on the website. And what I fell in love with was she talked about the precepts in a very immediate, concrete way. And I just closed my eyes and opened to what probably opened for a really good reason, is because I opened it and read it the most out of anything in the book. But it's the precept that I struggle with the most. So for those newer to Zen, if the word precept's new in this context, it's the moral and ethical teachings behind how we practice Zen. And there's 16 precepts that people receive or accept when they do the Jukai ceremony and become a Buddhist. And the first 6 of them kind of orient you in space and context to who you are in yourself, with your relationship to the teachings, who you are in the community. And then there's 10 grave precepts that are kind of how you do this, how you are, how you manifest the Buddhist teachings in your life, or the Zen Buddhist teachings anyway. And the one that I work, that comes back and hits me in the face the most, really, is not elevating oneself and blaming others, which is the 7th of the Grave Precepts. And I'm going to read a little bit about this book, and then, actually I don't know what's going to happen after that. I'll say something, and we'll see what it is, and hopefully it will have some relevance enough that will make you want to have a conversation about this. But forgive me for just reading out of a book. That's not the most exciting thing. But it's just such beautiful material, and her perspectives are just so vivid and alive and kind of functional that I'd really like to share this. So not elevating oneself and blaming others. What exactly is blaming? Everyone knows what it's like to blame the weather, the government, her parents, or the person who rear-ended their car, which is now costing a pretty penny. These are obvious examples, but blaming can also be very subtle. Whenever my mother misplaced or lost something, she would instantly call out, who took whatever it is to her 4 children and our father. And I remember teasing her that I planned to put the words "who took" on her tombstone. Even though her statement has the syntax of a question, it was clearly an accusation. But even if she had asked it as a question, it would have been like the philosopher's favorite non-question, "When did you stop beating your wife?" asked of somebody who had never married. The Bodhidharma version of this precept, not elevating oneself and blaming others, is: the 10 Dharma words are the body and mind. In the sphere of the equal Dharma, not making any distinction between oneself and others is called the precept of refraining from elevating oneself and blaming others. I'm going to read that again. The 10 Dharma worlds are the body and mind. In this sphere of equal Dharma, not making any distinction between oneself and others is called the precept of refraining from elevating oneself and others. Dogen's version is not elevating oneself and blaming others. Buddhas and teachers realized the absolute emptiness and realized the great earth. When the great body is manifested, there is neither outside nor inside in the emptiness. When the Dharma body is manifested, there is not even a single square inch of soil on the ground. Not elevating oneself and blaming others. The Buddha and teachers realized the absolute emptiness and realized the great earth. When the great body is manifested, there is neither outside nor inside in the emptiness. When the Dharma body is manifested, there is not even a single inch of soil on the ground. Clearly, this precept is about there being ultimately no separation between you and me, the equal Dharma, and no outside or inside of the whole, the one body. Because blame and elevation of oneself make no sense from that point of view. We should describe this precept as non-blaming instead of not blaming. But as we've seen with each of the precepts so far, before attaining that realization, we work with not blaming. But hopefully not just as a prohibition. A prohibition on blaming can just set up more blaming, usually of myself. Rather, it's good to get to know myself in a compassionate and accepting way as a blamer, and as one who elevates myself. The more I can do that, the deeper I can go with it. The more this precept will begin to manifest naturally. So that's the blaming part. And then there's a little passage in every case, the kind of blame that this precept concerns itself with, there is a condemnation or a rejection of something outside that on the inside I usually am or am afraid I might be. In the case of racism or sexism, for example, the blamer or rejecter most often isn't the same race or gender of the other. But there is an unacknowledged "I wouldn't be caught dead being that" fear in the inner rejection. The mechanism of blame is also unconscious. Johnny's sister isn't all that in touch with the fact that she tempted to take a cookie too, that kind of thing. This kind of rapid, automatic shooting from the hip ranges from the spectrum of scapegoating, witch hunts, taboos at one end, to "who took my keys" on the other end. Blame is what happens when I don't assume responsibility for the fact that I might be the one who lost my own socks or misplaced my own keys. In practicing with this precept, especially with needing to temper a tendency to be judgmental, it's good to ask, what am I afraid of being or becoming? What am I not tolerating in myself? What am I ghettoizing in myself? It's also good to notice the speed with which these kinds of judgments happen. It's as if we have to get rid of something so fast that we can't even allow ourselves to see it. Every time I blame you for being, doing, having, wearing something that my superego says is off limits, then I'm not even in touch with the rejection of something inner, that there is a great lack of openness happening. And I'm not only closed off to you, but I'm closing myself off or holding at bay something in myself, a fear, a temptation I don't want to know about. The results of this lack of freedom, not to mention the lack of love and compassion. So, when I see this come through the strongest in me, when I hear and see myself elevating myself or belittle or dismissing someone else, it's usually when I feel cornered, when I feel vulnerable, when I feel like I could be attacked, whether or not there's anyone around who would attack. But mostly it's about when I'm feeling like I'm functioning from a very fearful, egocentric existence. My natural tendency when I feel this way is to withdraw and probably dissociate a little bit. But that also gives me a little space to regroup, have a little conversation with myself, self-regulate a little bit, and find some sanity. But more often than not, when I'm feeling cornered, it's usually with people, it's usually in a public place. And it doesn't lead to my best moments because I have a really strong survival instinct and was told, actually there's a picture of me from being about probably 4 or 5 years old, and my father's yelling at me, and I have no idea why my mother took a picture of this at the time, other than she knew that 60 years later, I'd be sitting here. But my father was a person who had a really hot temper and not a lot of control when he was angry about anything. And he was in one of those modes, and I'm not very tall now, but I was not very tall as a younger person either. And I'm standing there with my hands on my hips, and I'm just staring him down. And I come up to like his few inches over his knee, and I'm like, come on. I want to have the fight now. I don't have space to have another way to get out of this. And that's where the, do you know who you're talking to kind of stuff starts coming out. And there's something useful and self-preserving in this. And at this point in my life, that's the last thing I want. Whatever it is that I'm fighting to preserve by making myself bigger when I'm afraid or when I'm vulnerable is what I want to be opening to now as a 62-year-old, 30-plus year Zen practitioner. But there's something really, really primitive that happens that on a good day I can kind of grab it, see it, work with it, and on a bad day become a complete bitch who's really mean to the checkout guy at Home Depot or the waitress that brought me my eggs cooked really hard instead of over easy, or and I will let them know how I feel about that, because I'm so important. And it's really a humbling, frightening, powerfully dismantling thing when I do see it. I'm in one of those, I have absolutely no idea what's going to come out of my mouth at any moments. There's something really powerful about those moments when I accept that I don't have control, and it's fine, and it doesn't really matter, because there isn't any self that really needs defending. But I don't hit it very often, and I hit on the defensive, bitchy one way more often. And I'm kind of tired of her. I feel like she's had lots of opportunities to say what she wants to say, and it usually hurts somebody, and I don't want to do that. But I struggle to catch myself sooner. Or maybe it's not even that. Maybe I don't want to catch myself, and maybe it just needs to fall and crumble more. But I think what I wanted to share was the difficulty and challenge of it. That it's so much easier to get self-important when you're cornered and try to preserve yourself than it is to have some grace and self-compassion and allow yourself to break down a little bit more and allow some of what you don't need that's been protecting you, that armor, to crumble a little bit. And I wish I were better at it. I wish I learned faster and didn't need to run through the same systematic pattern of steps over and over and over again. But I feel like it's been a big piece of my path, is learning how to stop and allow myself to kind of wrap myself in all of these pieces and examine them before opening my mouth or throwing a bottle of hot sauce across the room, for anyone that knows that part of me. And I think that's the value of the precepts for a lot of us, or I should just speak for myself, is that they're really great snapshots of human behavior at its best and its worst. And that each of these precepts is such a powerful mirror to work with. And that there's a lot of brilliance in this system that was created that's part of our practice. And it's not a checklist that I can go, yep, got that one done, I'll move on to the next one. That they keep coming back, and I keep seeing that I'm not as evolved as I was enjoying thinking I was the day before. And that it's really a humbling process to accept myself as a work in progress, and that everyone I'm frustrated with or that I'd like to blame for something is a work in progress as well. And there's also something really delightful about that to me. That it's not about earning a star or a good grade or passing. It's that as long as I'm alive, I get to keep confronting this over and over from every different angle and every different relationship and every different mistake and every different situation. And while there's 16 of these precepts to work with and choose from, this seems to be the one that's really mine, or feels like it is. And I think the reason the book very naturally opened to this page is because I go back and read this over and over, and that there's these reminders that it's not about being a bad person or doing something wrong all the time, but about how we can grow and work with who we are. And there's something really nice about that. There's something really positive and optimistic about that. And I'm not a super positive or optimistic person, as a lot of you know. I'm a worst case scenario, because then you're ready for whatever happens person. But I wanted to share this one partially because I wanted to kind of own it publicly a little, and partially because I really want to know, what is it for each of you that makes you need to make yourself bigger, need to elevate yourself? What are the situations that do that to you? What is happening when you're blaming others? What is the part of yourself that you're not making room for? Where is the duality for each of you, where you believe you're separate from the person that you're blaming? And what is it like when that slaps you in the face and you get to sit and work with it a little bit?